Salutations from space. This is Gemini Brett and Gary Caton here to continue our journey into Standing Rock Astrology. Gary, good to see you again.
Good to see you, brother.
Nice to hear your sirens. It kind of tunes us into what we're doing here together. I hope they don't come arrest you simply for sharing their astrological wisdom.
Yesterday when I signed into Facebook, in solidarity with our brothers and sisters up there in the Lakota Nation, I signed in, "Come get me coppers." So hopefully they didn't take that too literally.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's been an interesting phenomenon on Facebook right now where it's like, hey, the local police force has been tracking people that are at Standing Rock by watching their Facebook. And so why doesn't everyone in the world just check into Standing Rock and it'll confuse the heck out of them? And it's been interesting because nobody really knows where that idea came from. Some people were like, oh, it's like the water protectors are saying do this, or the elders. I've talked to people out at Standing Rock who are there and they're like, I don't know. But what they've said is like, great, because it's also bringing us, not more people to this movement, bringing attention, allowing everyone to know what's going on, or more people to. And also, like you said, it's showing us standing in solidarity. So just to kind of get back to the intent for Gary and myself here, this is us connecting in prayer in a way that we do through astrological medicine. We hope that it serves you to honor the Standing Rock chart in this way, and for us to see how it's evolved through time. The last episode we spoke about the lunar nodes, the dragon's belly and back and such, about the eclipses. And the second episode we spoke about the sun and the moon in the first quarter phase. In the first episode, so we really shared our intentions for this journey. But here in episode 4, I've got the right man on the horn, because this is a Mercury master, Mr. Gary Caton. And we are going to observe Mercury on the Standing Rock chart as he spun in that moment, where he was, and also to see, again, zooming out of the frame of the film, to honor the scene that held this Mercury at the time. So Gary, I'm going to shift over to a chart view here, and I will bring Hermes into the mix here in Aries. And another time we'll speak about how closely aligned he is to Neptune and to Mars, and how Jupiter is also in Aries. But for now, just to take it down to who is Aries Mercury in the 12th house.
Right, so this Mercury is already rising in the morning sky, as we saw earlier, as we spoke about earlier. I can't keep all the episodes straight at this point, bro, but this Mercury is out ahead of the sun, right? So it's sort of the advanced guard, it's the scout, and it's in Aries, the cardinal fire sign of the first sign of the zodiac. So this is a very powerful warrior-like Aries that is looking ahead and looking and seeing, what's going on out there. Where are the dangers? How do I need to respond for the sake of my people, and so forth. So this is a very Aries rules the head, and Mercury is about mental. So this is a very powerful and strong mental ability that is shown in this chart.
Yeah, beautifully said. I mean, I find that there's more confusion around the Aries energetic and archetype than, well, I shouldn't say any of them, because they're all have been twisted, it would seem, by those who have suppressed the astrological wisdom over time. I find personally that all of the cardinal signs, that is the signs that begin seasons as Aries begins spring in the tropical system, have this intent of otherness. And it's very interesting because Aries itself is known historically to be the sign of self, and to be, again, the head, what's happening there. And yet it's the warrior and the pioneer. And I remind those who question me for saying that there is an others focus for Aries, the sign of self, that it is the warrior, and that the warrior in a place of righteousness is here for the tribe. And we could say that the tribe gladly gives the warrior the largest cut of meat, Tempe if you prefer, because they know the warrior needs their strength in order to protect them. We could say that this is the case for the pioneer. Both paths can be pretty lonely, and it's really about developing aloneness or selfness. When we look at the polarities, and this is the wonderful thing about connecting the hemispheres as well and the seasonal difference, but the polarities in the chart, they always speak to one another to help us find the middle way. Libra, Aries, put it together, libraries. All right, and Libra is about othership, and Aries is about selfness. And in the middle, we reach the middle way. So selfness is not selfish, and that's a very important thing to say with Aries. And there's an exercise I hear when I see this pioneering, this scout Aries Mercury. And we'll talk later about how he's cohabiting with Mars and Aries and what that might mean and what it might mean for Neptune to be between them. And Jupiter also rising there as a morning star in Aries, and this power of the warrior, we could say. And I love Neptune here too, because we're looking at water protectors, which is alive here. It's alive in the 12th house, and Gary, I think, will bring us back into that. But there's an exercise I love to suggest to people to connect to their Aries. And we all have Aries, whether you have planets there or not. We are all of the signs. It's to say, okay, think about this, hunter-gatherer style, and we're running out of food. And there's only this much left. And we could all eat for 2 days, maybe a week. Or one person could take that and have the energy to go out and find new food, to find where that herd is so we can hunt, to find those berries or whatever. Can you imagine the isolation of taking that responsibility on, knowing that if you fail, the last words on your loved one's lips might be your voice spoken not in a sweet way. Yeah. And sometimes that pain of selfness and loneliness can come in when we don't have connection to the honor it is to serve in this way of pioneer, of scout, of spear bearer, as Gary mentioned for these before, and as that righteous warrior. But how can we stand in such a way that we're protecting, I like to say, as Mother Bear, who knows it's not all about the claws, but also with the cuddles, that there is a tribeness here. And how can we stand in solidarity in a way of peace that doesn't involve war and throwing spears, for example? But
right, because that's what this is. It's a treaty. Yeah.
Because it's a treaty. And then also, what about the 12th house, Gary, and Mercury being, in a way, as we've seen, lost in the 12th house? And what could that possibly mean for how this treaty's gone down over time?
Right. Well, the 12th house represents the last of the divisions of the sky as we go around, right? So similar energy to Pisces, not the same thing, but it's sort of like our relationship with collectivity, if you will. When I say collectivity, in modern terms, we might talk about the collective unconscious. We might talk about archetypes. So it's the ability of the person to become an archetype. Yeah. Ultimately. Now, becoming an archetype is a very lonely endeavor. And it's a very dangerous endeavor because people project on you. They project all their, all their fears and insecurities as well as their golden shadow on you, so that, but ultimately, I think that in terms of serving the collective, serving the tribe, serving the greatest good, this was an amazing treaty. And I think that if I were Red Cloud, I would be proud of it. Again, I'm nothing like Red Cloud. I'm a white guy born 100 years later after he signed this treaty. But, he preserved not just land and payments and food, but also hunting rights in Colorado so that they could maintain something of their, nomadic lifestyle, hunting rights elsewhere. So this, to me, I think that, this symbolizes doing, the hero's sort of, the warrior's sacrifice for the greater good. That peace was what was the best thing to do at this time because, he could have gone on fighting and probably the warrior in him wanted to go on fighting, but was that the best thing for the tribe? Because, ultimately, you fighting a war you can't win is not wise. It's not good for the people. The people will only suffer if you fight a war you can't win. So to me, I think he got about as good a deal as he could possibly have done. And if it had, like I said, if it had been honored, it's a decent treaty.
Yeah.
From my point of view, again, you know, I can't pretend to put myself in a obviously, you know, they probably would have preferred we never crossed the ocean. But considering that we were already here, you know, and if it had been honored, it wasn't a bad deal. They had, you know, so, I mean, that's the way I see the 12th house playing out here, is that, you know, the warrior has to put, you know, the warrior's not fighting for his own pride or his own ego. He's fighting for the very best he can get for the tribe, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's an imagination in the 12th. And I mean, I'd love to add that, could we actually, like you and me and Gary, could we imagine a future? How long will it take? Can we imagine a future where actually there's now appreciation that we did cross that ocean?
Yeah, wow.
It obviously would have to change amazingly, drastically to heal these great wounds that have been caused. But is that possible? Is that what we're doing here as we bring our attention to this, as we realign ourselves? Yeah. So that 12th houseness, even though we have an Aries Mars, you know, Aries Jupiter, and right at the vernal equinox degrees, and we'll get back to them, but this Aries Mercury, which is consciousness, which is mind, which is how we lens the world, which is how we experience, how we learn, how we teach, how we create, how we communicate. There's a warrior essence here. And remember that this treaty, this Second Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, was born out of war because the white man just got, I don't know what the euphemism is, just got their ass kicked. Yeah. And basically had to say, you know, how can we appease you? So how can we share this land, right? And a treaty was made that really wasn't such a raw deal. I mean, now
compared to other raw deals anyways. Yeah. It wasn't the rawest of deals anyways.
And it was like, you're right. So in Aries Mercury, like it could still be tuned to like, no, war, we're looking out for us, you know what I mean? And fire. But there's something about this 12th houseness. And when we see Mercury, when we get out of the frame and see the scene, we'll see this water protector energy here as well. The 12th house, I should just add, like historically has some baggage. I mean, the old Hellenistic astrology, it's the house of hidden enemies. So that's really interesting here, right?
Yeah, so it makes you wonder if people were really coming to these negotiations in good faith.
Absolutely, and so does history. Actually, history doesn't make us wonder that.
Yeah, right.
Her story, however, is something we're trying to bring back here. So there's a peaceness. And speaking of her story, I like to think of the 12th as the waters of the womb, because this is what happened the 2 hours before your birth. And so, of course, there's some pain there, as it's been seen in the medical astrology traditions, or in modern times, we kind of think of it as like the drama of your karma, or the dream world, the unseen, because this is the last 2 hours of your mother's labor. That's not an easy time if you've witnessed that. And it's that child being flushed from the waters of the womb, and maybe out of all that is in creation into the individual experience. So there's a beautiful combination of that here with an Aries Mercury and rising before the sun as a scout, a pioneer of mind and thought. Also that can, and this might not happen right away because of 12th house is the last one to find its way to rise, since it was the last one that just had. It takes an entire day. And what does that mean in grander and grander cycles? But a pioneer that's here to bring the dream and bring spirit and bring that essence of the unknown back into reality is willing to fight for that. But maybe it's going to take a while before it comes around, you see. And the 12th houseness, as well as, and I didn't mean to do this, but I will, as well as Mercury's pretty strong alignment to Neptune. We'll see that even more so with Mars. But I love Mars, you know, sacred sword, and Neptune, very much for water and the professor of Pisces school. I mean, this is water protector. So, you know, that's a beautiful happening on this chart. But for Mercury being in the 12th having this proximity to Neptune. I think some of the things that we've seen, which was like, I can bring Mars back in as well, alcohol as a weapon, speaking, getting lost in the dream, being so connected to spirit that other people can't even understand what you're speaking to them, choosing peace when maybe war would have been the better way to go. And I never
certainly I think other Sioux chose war later, you know, probably because this treaty was broken, you know. And so, you know, he's making a choice here. And the thing is, if you follow Mercury's journey from here, what happens is Mercury becomes invisible at some point, so that we could say this Mercury, in terms of visibility, yes, it's morning star, but it's in the process of diving down into the underworld. And so you could see that as Red Cloud, you know, retiring to the reservation. You know, it's probably not the thing he wanted to do as an individual, but the thing that he thought ultimately would best, you know, serve his tribe, that the way that they could survive. As you said, you know, the long view of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share this kind of astronomy version here again so we can see on this day. Now, pay no attention to the hours here because my clock on this software, Stellarium, which is great, is set to West Coast time. But here we are, April 29th, 1868. And you can see here in the east, before the sun rises, that Mercury, following Jupiter and Mars and Neptune, but that Mercury, who's not always visible, in fact, not usually visible, was visible before the sunrise at this time. Would have looked more like this, you know. And it's hard to say from this far northern latitude if that happened or not, but that's maybe a story for another time. But the deal with Mercury, I'm just going to cruise through the day. So look at how he's before the sun, so he rose before the sun. If I go through the days, you can see what Gary's talking about here. Here into May, Mercury's gone well under what's called under the beams. He can't be seen. At this point, he's literally moving behind the sun. And then later in his cycle, he comes out and he shows himself as an evening star. So if I let the sun set in our view here, we'll see that there's a time also in the Mercury cycle where he's an evening star. And then what goes down, I'll just bring the sun up so we can kind of see this happening, is that Mercury, as Mercury's passing Earth, he's making this maximum reach as an evening star from the sun. And then he moves retrograde as he's passing the Earth, and he goes back under the beams, coming between the Earth and the sun. And then he's born as a morning star. And it takes about 4 months on average for the whole thing to go down. 116 days, is that right, Gary? 118?
On average, 116 on average. So three times a year.
Mercury morning is scout, you know, or like I just shaved. I had this kind of crusty beard happening. But in the morning, it's like, you know, we're doing a good job of, we'll just be these two examples right now, Gary. Do you have evening star Mercury in your chart?
No.
Your morning star. All right, so morning star Hermes, like the fresh-faced babe who stole his brother's cattle and this kind of thing, the trickster, brought harmony into the world, created all these things on the first day of his life, this genius, like really fast mind, and with Aries there too, that can be super fast in that way. And then evening star, Gary's kind of showing it to us right now, Trismegistus, the bearded sage. Yeah, and between...
Been around the block a few times.
A couple? Been around the sun a few? But between morning and evening, Mercury goes under the beams. He becomes the psychopomp, the one who can bring souls from this place to their new world and the lands below and such like that. So it's really crucial to see where Mercury, not all astrologers, maybe not even many do this, where he is in his cycle. So in the second episode of this sharing, we looked at how sure, it's a Leo moon and a Taurus sun, but the new moon was also Taurus in these earlier degrees of Taurus. And the new moon comes our way every 29 and a half days. Well, a new Mercury comes our way every 4 months on average, every 160 days on average. So we can also rewind this chart to see when Mercury was last with the sun. And this always happens in the middle of Mercury's retrograde period. And what we're going to see here is that this happened in the sign of Pisces. And I could bring in this whole chart, which would actually, if Gary and I were doing this as a consultation for this person, we would look at all of this, because the one thing I will show is how important it is that this is happening, especially from a traditional point of view with the sign of Pisces. It's happening right with Jupiter.
Wow.
But the point here is that, yes, on the frame of the film, Mercury's morning star Aries. And if we honor this sunrise time, as we have done and are doing for the birth, well, Mercury is also 12th house, as we spoke about. We bring in Neptune, he's with Neptune. But this morning star Mercury Aries got his start. Like every planet on your chart has itself a birth time. And this Mercury was born in the sign of Pisces. Yeah.
The waters, the primordial waters, you know. Yeah, and speaking for the waters, right? Many Wicone, right? That message. How beautiful is that? To distill, in alchemy, the act of making something simple is called distillation. To distill, right, the fight for their rights and for their life down to these simple words. Many Wicone, water is life, right? That, wow, I mean, that is just amazing that, you know, in this digital age where, you know, we're being bombarded by messages everywhere, and that these people who were, you know, practicing Stone Age technology, and now they're selling T-shirts that say "Many Wicone," you know. I stand with Standing Rock, you know. They're really like adapting to this culture and this way of messaging, and in a wonderful, beautiful way, and in a Pisces way, you know. So I just think it's really amazing that you see this Mercury, who came from Pisces, was transitioning through Aries, and was on its way into the underworld, and literally, both figuratively, astronomically, on its way to the underworld, and literally on its way to a very long and difficult experience in the underworld of being, you know, just forgotten, you know. And what really breaks my heart is you know, many of us, you know, we thought that President Obama was different. We thought he was going to be different, and he was going to do a lot of things differently. And he said things that were different. And one of the things that he said to the First Nations people back in 2009 is, "As long as I'm in the White House, I will not forget you."
Yeah, literally went to Standing Rock and met with people there too, and assured them of this promise, right?
I don't know about that part. What I'm talking about was they came to the White House. There was a council. I don't know that he's been to Standing Rock. I know that
he did, yeah, and we'll look at that chart too.
Okay.
As we move along.
So at some point, you know, he was involved, but then, you know, like the Congress has, they decided they weren't going to listen to him. You know, they being the corporations and stuff. And so now, you know, it's like everybody's wondering, why doesn't, I mean, Obama could just cancel this with a stroke of the pen.
Right, ended the Keystone Pipeline. Right, moving through white people's backyards. So,
you know, why doesn't he just end this thing already and deny the easement? That's what they're asking for, by the way, the solution. Because, you know, you'll hear this a lot, right? If you decide to become an activist, people want to know, if you complain about something that's a problem, they say, well, what is your solution? You know, what are your demands, etc. The solution, they're saying, just, you know, deny the easement. There's an easement that's a federal easement. When the pipeline finally gets close to the river, which, by the way, the Missouri River is the longest river in the United States, right? So it's like basically the primal waters, you know, embodied. Yeah, the place where it gets closest is a like U.S. core of something or other. It's federal land that is granted the final easement. And if they take away that easement, it's done. It's over, right? They'll have to find another way to do it. And a lot of people are like, well, why in the world can't, the power of the pen is mightier than the power of the sword. Why can't he just, stroke of the pen, make it happen? And I mean, we can go into the politics of all that. I don't know that we really want or need to.
Well, I think the one thing I'll share right now, because this is a beauty of astrology, right, is that we can compare charts. So one thing we'll do on this journey is look at the Standing Rock chart with the chart for the USA and see some of the tensions and the agreements. But what I just brought in on this outside circle to the Standing Rock chart is the chart of one Bernie Sanders. And what I just want to show here, because you might have seen the letter of recommendation that he just wrote to Obama, which wasn't this Hillary Clinton thing of all people should play nice and let's make sure corporations can work and people are heard. It was, hey, this is wrong and this is what's happening and people are shooting pepper spray and let's end this. And, just like you stepped up with the Keystone Pipeline, put this to an end. And I really suggest, I think I'll link it here, reading Bernie Sanders' letter to Obama. But look at where Bernie's moon and his Mars are as aligned to the Standing Rock Mercury.
Wow, check it out.
He's got emotional connection and he's a warrior for this cause of bringing this consciousness forth.
Wow.
But get back to this.
Before we look at the USA chart, can I say one more thing about?
I'm not going to do that today, Gary, but please say what you say.
So we have this alignment in Pisces, which is the sort of where this Mercury is coming from. Where it's going to is the next alignment, the next conjunction of Mercury with the Sun will be in the sign of Cancer. Okay. Well, it'll be in Taurus and then it'll be in Cancer.
Yeah, will you explain the difference between this Taurus alignment and the one?
So basically Mercury passes between the Sun and the Earth, right? We call that an inferior conjunction, and then it passes on the other side of the Sun from the Earth. We call that a superior conjunction.
And so this is Mercury on the between the Earth and the Sun here, and
this is Mercury closest to the Earth.
Is retrograde, passing the Earth closest to the Earth. And if I just play this through time, this is Mercury getting to his height as a morning star, and then he chases the Sun down. And when he goes under the beams, getting close to the Sun, he can't be seen. That's the exterior alignment behind the Sun. It's happening right now as we record it. And then he pops up as an evening star again, goes retrograde and makes this next alignment that Gary's speaking about. And what's so key about Cancer, what does Cancer share with Pisces, where he met before the chart, Gary?
Water signs.
Water signs, right? And so we see this beautiful thing with Mercury. Again, he's the Aries Mercury on this chart, but he's 12th house, which is watery anyway. And he was born in Pisces, not only in Pisces, and I'll ask you to speak about this in a second, Gary, but with Jupiter, who's the traditional ruler of Pisces.
Yeah.
And then he comes, so he's got the fire thing of Aries just in the frame of the film, like the personal thing, yeah? And the fire is like the intuition, right? Or the spirit and the will. But he's born in the water, the heart, the empathy, that side. So we could say like fire is like will-based, maybe yang intuition, and water is yin-based heart intuition.
Yeah.
Neither of them, I'm showing the alchemical triangles, neither of them are divided like the air and the earth are, and that's very important here. But it's a very kind of tapped in spiritual water and spiritual fire, and the combining of these two energies, which is just beautiful and profound on an energetic. And here he is in Pisces, and the next one he'll be in Cancer. And this is something that Gary's work, and this isn't about our work or whatever, but I will say for you who are interested in this, Gary's coming out with a series of 3 books. That's Mercury's number. And the first one's coming out really soon, Gary, right? So I don't want, we're not here to promote our work or whatever, but.
Yeah. Well, just to share that, I'm bringing who I am to this solidarity action, right? And who I am is I'm a person who has done a boatload of research into the planet Mercury and its behavior. And this is something that happens each and every year. Mercury spends more time in one element than any other element, right? There's 4 elements each year. So each year takes on that quality of that element. So that, this treaty happened in a Mercury water year, right? And then, the next year would have been different, and the next year, and then every 6 to 7 years it comes back around to this element. So this idea that Mercury, the messenger, right, is spending more time in this water element than any other element. I mean, there you go. I mean, the messenger, not just the protector of the water, but the messenger of the water. That's the genius of this, is that it's just, it's so obvious, right? Many Wiconi, water is life. That's the message.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, do you know how hard that is to like get a single clear message that is effective and portrays everything about what you're trying to do? There's people who have degrees and have written books about how to do that. But it just happened. These people just did it because it's who they are. It's where their spirit is coming from. It's where, it's in them,
Yeah, I'd love to add, like, so again, like Pisces can be so, we spoke about this in the last episode with the Pisces South Node, but it can be so mystical that sometimes it's hard to hear what it's saying. It's so poetic.
Yeah.
A great gift, you see that this morning star visible, Aries direct, Mercury, honest, right? Aries Mercury mind is bringing for that Pisces gift of, here is that phrase, here is the warrior word, so we can stand for the water. And as Gary's saying so beautifully, be the voice of the water. And see, that's so important too, because many Wiconi, right, that is a different thing than water is life. Yes, this is the translation, water is life,
Right.
but we should all learn to say this also in the native tongue, because that's where the magic is. That's where the power is. And in the side of these people, their language was almost completely decimated, right?
I know,
They were literally tortured in the boarding schools if they spoke their native tongue. And we don't need to get buried in that now, although I think we will look into that in future episodes. But this is all alive in this 12th house Aries Mercury born in Pisces in a water year, in conjunction with Jupiter. So maybe to honor the speed of Mr. Mercury, Gary, I'll ask you to bring anything else you want to bring forth. But one thing I would love to hear you speak about is how significant it is that Mercury, this Aries 12th house Mercury, was born in Pisces with Jupiter.
Right, because that doesn't happen every time, right? I mean, so Mercury makes 3 of these particular kinds of conjunctions every year, and every year he'll do these conjunctions in a particular element. This year it happens to be the earth element. And this year Jupiter also happens to be in Virgo. So this year Mercury would have made one of these conjunctions somewhere near Jupiter, but not every year does that happen. So it's pretty rare. And for it to happen in pretty much, what was it, almost the same degree, right?
So, let's bring that back, because you raise a really good point. I'll bring this up to 2016 after you just speak about. So this is March 8th, 1868. Mercury kind of getting the news for the next 4 months of his cycle in the sign of Pisces, and right here with Jupiter.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, and then I'll show what you're talking about right now, which is the modern Earth sign Mercury's and how it aligned to Jupiter.
Yeah. So this is a very rare thing. It doesn't happen very often. And with Jupiter being the ruler of Pisces, it's like that receiving thing that we talked about before, right? So Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces and Sagittarius, by the way, so which is the 8th house in this chart. So Jupiter is welcoming Mercury into his home and saying, here, let me give you the gifts that I have to give and send you forth with them. Yeah. So this is a very gifted Mercury in this chart. It's coming from a place where it has the gifts of the water. It has the spiritual gifts of the water. It has the mental gifts of the water. It has the spirit of the water. It is not just speaking about the water. It is speaking with the water. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And I love this idea too, Gary, of like traditionally, as you said, Jupiter rules Pisces. In modern times, it's said that Neptune rules Pisces. Now, Neptune was discovered in 1846, just 24 years or 2 Jupiter cycles before this chart. And look at how Mercury was born on March 8th in Pisces, received the message to bring to the world with, mythologically speaking, Mercury's father, Jupiter, who is all about Pisces and prayer and connection, moisture, connecting us together. And now Mercury, by the time he's born, came to visit the modern ruler, we could say, Neptune. It's
Wow.
like he's bringing us from the traditions to the new way as well. And in a sense, honoring the water on both sides of that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And so what Gary's work has shown us, and others have spoken about this, but the way that Gary's bringing it forth is just profound. I really encourage you to check him out. And again, you can do that at the Hermetic Astrology podcast. I'm saying that not to like promote anybody here, but to say like learn the beauty of evolving astrology, and you will learn so much there. And it's a commitment to Mercury in this way. But look at, so here was this conjunction of Mercury and Sun before Standing Rock birth, Pisces. And the next one, as Gary mentioned, for the interior conjunction is going to be Cancer. So 4 months later, he gets the news in Cancer. And by the way, with this chart that we're using, this was right at the 4th house cusp. And so we can talk about that more another time perhaps. But the next one is going to be in the sign of Scorpio, because Mercury does this in the same element every year. And then he'll shift from the water to the air, and then from the air to the earth. Yes? Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Fire, water, air, earth.
Yeah. The sun is its father, the moon its mother, the wind hath carried it in its belly, and the earth is its nurse. And so this was a water consciousness year, okay? And this year, as Gary was mentioning, of 2016, and this is also true for 2017, I'll just go to now, and I'll show you the last Mercury-Sun conjunction, was actually just a few days ago. This is the next one. Let me go back to the beginning of this year, and what I can show you is that they happened in Capricorn, Earth sign, by the way, right at the 10th house cusp, quadrant of this Standing Rock chart that we're using. And to me, this is immensely important.
And it was April 1st that the lady opened the Sacred Stone Camp.
Right, and let's look at April 1st. And so the idea is January 14th, 2016, Mercury, for the first time in 6 or 7 years, is bringing consciousness now to the earth in general. Like Gary said, like literally, Mercury will spend more time in earth signs than in the water, air, and fire combined in the years of 2016, 2017, bringing our consciousness to the earth, to the body, to the senses, to the earth itself. And Gary and I have been sharing all these stories of things that are being unearthed at this time. And people will say, oh, well, that's Pluto because Pluto's in Capricorn. And there's some truth to that. And yet we used to do astrology without Pluto for a long, long, long time. And this is one of the mystical ways that the earth is coming back to mind, you see. So at the end of the cycle, what was that date, Gary? Just basically the month?
April 1st, yeah.
And so April 1st, look at where Mercury is, right? In fact, exact with this birth chart's Mercury.
How about that, huh?
Yeah.
That's when the Sacred Stone Camp was opened. And she started inviting people to come, to protest, right? Because the act of protesting is Mercury, you see?
And look, this is towards the end of that cycle that began January 14th in the earth of Capricorn. And Capricorn is the trunk and the roots, the eldership, the voice of the depths of the earth.
And it was the elder, I can't remember her name right now, but it was the grandmother elder who opened the Sacred Stone Camp on this day.
Now, Mercury found his way to what's called maximum elongation, and we're not going to lay that whole trip, but it's basically his highest, almost his brightest western star or evening star or kind of bearded sage Trismegistus in this cycle in the sign of Taurus. And one of the things that Gary's really shown in his work is that that place of Mercury as a very high and bright evening star is going to align in the same zone of the zodiac as the place where he receives the next assignment from the light of the sun. You see how it's in the same zone, same degrees. And this one was in Taurus. And not only that, and this doesn't happen every Mercury Earth year, but it did this year. And I got our cameras in front of my control pad here. But this was a Mercury, because Mercury, we talked about the lunar nodes and the eclipses of sun and moon meeting at their nodes last time. Well, Mercury nodes too. And this is one of Mercury's nodes. And so this was what's called a Mercury transit, where Mercury can visibly be seen crossing between us and the disk of sun source light. Yeah. So really bringing our mind now into the earth.
Into the Taurus earth that is the, the sun sign of this chart. That idea of the fertile earth, of, and of the bounteous earth that provides us with all we need if we take care of her. That idea being, boom, reseeded into consciousness.
I mean, it's amazing, right? So mind, Mercury, is like this pinpoint, this like focal, bringing the light of Taurus sun. Remember what Taurus is truly about. And there's a voice, there's people here that will remind you. And so this movement's beginning. Yeah. And we're starting to get it. The messenger is starting to bring the news to us, very visibly so. And then Mercury went behind the sun, and the alignment was in the sign of Cancer and very close to the what's called the IC of this chart. And then the next interior alignment was, oops, wrong button. That's an eclipse. There we go. September 12th, 2016, in the sign of Virgo. It was recently after this solar eclipse in Virgo. Okay, September 1st. Mercury had stationed retrograde the day before. I want to share here in Virgo. See, he was just about to leave this earth sign Virgo and go into the air and cross the autumnal equinox point. And he's like, no, more earth, more practice, more devotion, more prayer, more Virgo. And after the solar eclipse, the next day in Virgo, okay, which is really important. It's close to the nodes as we saw with the Standing Rock chart. But then Mercury met with the sun on September 12th. And as Gary was mentioning before, he did so with Jupiter again. Now, I could say that if I go back to the time of the solar eclipse, actually, this was right when Mercury was with Jupiter. And in fact, Mercury, because he's stationed retrograde, met Jupiter 3 times this year.
Yeah.
Once on the way before his retrograde, then he turns around and he has another meeting with the master. And by the way, this one also featured Venus. Okay, they were traveling together for a while. And then Mercury stationed direct later on, and then met Jupiter again in the sign of Libra. And I'm excited to speak about Jupiter's Libra year, which is this year, and how he ingressed into Libra from his year in Virgo on September 9th, and the Supreme Court decision that day. But that's probably that's for another episode. Share. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really amazing how Mercury recently made this conjunction made his last retrograde conjunction with the sun in Virgo. Again, the sign where we had that very first Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Earth signs in the 1960s, the sign where the North Node is in this chart. And what happened? All of a sudden, people started to hear about this more and more, right? It was brought to the attention of the president. And why? Because the bulldozers dug up sacred burial grounds. The earth was disturbed. And then this is what really brought it to the news. It still hasn't really reached what we'd call mainstream media, but who's the lady with Democracy Now? She was covering that when they, and then they brought out the attack dog, Amy, they brought out the attack dogs and all that stuff. And I mean, this is what's exciting about this, is because remember, it was when they turned the dogs on the black people in the 60s that people finally said, oh my God, what are you doing? Give these people their rights, for goodness sakes. And I think maybe, I hope to God that we're finally reaching this place now where we can say, give these people their water, treat them as human beings, honor your agreements, you know? And yeah, so it just, you know, obviously I'm kind of excited here because I've done all this research with Mercury stuff, but I think it's no accident that, you know, these earth signs are being activated, and you know, you had this earth action that happened, and things are getting, now, couple things before we leave. It just so happens that the United States was also born in a year where the Mercury retrogrades were happening in water. So isn't it funny that of all people who should be able to hear this message, it should be the United States, because it's our message too, you see?
Yeah.
And it won't be for a few more years before the Mercury retrogrades get back to the water. You know, so it might be that, you know, it takes a few years for this message to finally like complete what it's here to do. But in the meantime, so right now we're actually in the hardest part, because the opposite element of, well, it's not exactly opposite. It's a complementary element to water is earth. So, you know, forming the boundaries and saying no more, enough is enough, stop it. You know, stop sicking dogs on people. Stop not honoring your agreements. Stop not consulting these people before you do things that are going to affect their water, you know, and so forth. So yeah, it's just amazing how, you know, this stuff, it works.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing about astrology, is it's real. Hopefully this sharing from me and Gary is serving its intention, and also just kind of opening some new windows for you guys out there. And Gary, maybe for you too. So this would probably only be for those of you who speak Astro Geek, but I wonder, Gary, in your Mercury research, when you see things like that, if like now with Mercury aligning to Jupiter, one of the points, and then back in 1868, I wonder if all of the Mercury interior conjunctions have a similar aspect to Jupiter as he's making that track. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's something that I've intended to look at for quite some time. I did pull up and create, you know, the first thing you have to do is you just have to make your computer spit out the list, right? And then you have to go through the list and sort it out and figure. So I spit out the list, but then I lost a hard drive, and I lost the list. I not only lost the list, but I lost the ability to generate the list, because it was on one of those old operating systems and this and that and the other. So I haven't been able to work on that one yet, but it's significant that we have, you know, it doesn't happen every time. I can't really tell you exactly how often it happens, but I can tell you it definitely does not happen every time. And it is significant that we had that same thing happening again this year as it did, you know, in that year. Yeah.
Yeah, and the voice, so it's also the voice of Jupiter, you see, because Jupiter met Mercury in Pisces and sent him out. And one thing you said so beautifully, yeah, we're in this year where Mercury's doing the dance in the earth signs, and this whole thing started with Earth coming up, right?
Yeah.
But it was what? People's burial grounds, spirits under the earth. So,
and you know what's really disgusting about that? They filed the action saying, you know, no, you can't bulldoze this particular part because there's burial grounds there. And it was the very next day that they because, you know, when you file something in court, it's public record. So again, I'm assuming here, I don't know for a fact, but it looked like to me that they said, oh, you want to try to stop us? We'll just jump on a bulldozer and go ahead and get this stuff going before the courts can have anything to say about it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from people who are out there, like exactly that. They were saying, look, you're bulldozing sacred land. Let me just show you the map of where it is so you can at least avoid these places until we can sit and talk about it. and the next day they hit those places exactly.
Oh, man.
And so when we also talk about Mercury in the 12th house, there are sometimes it's kind of hidden enemies. Let me just express truth to you so you can very clearly hear it. That's a beautiful gift of an Aries Mercury.
Right.
I'll have to
Yeah.
tell you that. And people don't hear it. Like it's lost. Or they
heard it.
Right.
They heard it, but they responded, you know, instead of from the heart, they responded from like an inhuman place, you know.
Right.
And they've taken these people and put them in that the protesters that they shot with rubber bullets and killed their horses and stuff. They've taken them and put them in kennels, and they've written numbers on their skin like this Nazi kind of stuff, man. It's really disgusting. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely horrible. And static is on the line from the leaders of this so-called, you know, from the country and from the people who are running for presidency. So, you know, you spoke in the last episode this prayer for the candidates, and I think that's beautiful because one of the things that the folks out there at Standing Rock, I hear them again and again, will also pray for these police, believe and pray for these corporations, you know. So this isn't about fighting against something. It's about, I shouldn't even say fighting, but it's about protecting something that we love, you know? And that's so important. And that's such, to me, a Pisces theme, and with Jupiter there. But there's one thing else I would share is that in these cycles, Mercury, as Gary was telling us, goes through these different parts of his path. And Gary's work has shown Mercury's 4-month cycle in relationship to the hero's journey, which was brought forth by Joseph Campbell, I think, in that language anyway, although it's certainly an archetypal theme from everywhere. But this is this path. So we're looking at April 29th, 1868. It's a Pisces cycle because we saw Mercury align to the sun in Pisces on March 6, 1868. And that was right with Jupiter, as we saw. But here we are from the seed moment to separation, germination in your language, call of the mentor, and then the separation threshold. So maybe the last thing I'd ask you to share before we close down this Mercury session, Gary, is what is that separation threshold right before the initiation or ordeal about?
Right. Well, the threshold is, again, it's that choice moment where, you know, when the hero receives the call to adventure, it's like that seed, right? That seed has been just burst out of the ground, right? And then the hero usually receives some mentoring from a wise figure. They gain some experience, but then they have to make that choice. Okay, I'm going to take, and usually they're given a gift, like either a magical item or a weapon to take on their journey with them. This is the archetypal theme. So, right, so you can think about Luke Skywalker meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi and getting his lightsaber, or you can think about, you know, in native terms, it would be, you know, meeting the elder, having your dream interpreted, understanding your medicine a little bit, and then going out and deciding, you know, okay, I'm going to go into a strange land. I'm going to go someplace I've never been before because it's necessary. And that would be like Red Cloud, you know, deciding, okay, you know, we're going to take on this reservation thing because it's the best deal we can get right now. It's better than fighting an enemy that we can't defeat, you know. It's better to claim the victory we have and to take what we can get now and, you know, go into this strange way of life that we have no idea how to live, but we're going to be, you know, we're going to trust our warrior spirit, our hero spirit enough to go ahead and do that. You know, so this is that dark land this strange land that Mercury went into and that they as a tribe went into. And, you know, all the atrocities that came along with that, you know, that unfortunately are still happening. So it's like, you know, when is enough, man? For God's sakes, you know, let these people out from under, you know, the heel of your boot, you know. Stop trying to grind them into the dirt. I mean, we can't take back what's been done, but we can stop doing it.
And we can open our ears and learn. As we share that this is one of the beautiful promises, I think. And with Aries, Mercury, like, it's going to keep speaking honesty until it is heard. And it's speaking the honesty of spirit and the water, Pisces, of Jupiter, you know, and Jupiter in its righteous ways we'll look into, like that essence of spirit. And I want to share this last thing of this Mercury cycle as we're looking not only as the frame, but also to the scene of the film. But have a go here. If we look at Gary's schedule for Mercury in this session, he again started in Pisces, and this was with Jupiter on March 6th. And then the call to the mentor, the meeting with the master on March 16th. So let's take a look at who the mentor is. Here's March 6th is March 8th, actually met with Jupiter and the sun. And then if I go to March 16th here with Mercury emerging as a morning star, meets with the teacher called Mars.
Wow.
In Pisces. And look, the voice of the water and the water protectors.
Yeah.
So next time we'll get closer to Mars, maybe as we head away from the sun, honor the message of Mercury, the great Hermes, and we'll go and speak with the goddess Venus.
Yeah.
What she's doing in Gemini in the sacred hoop as a bright, shining evening star at this time.
She's the real power of this chart, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in such a sacred place of space. So again, we hope that you have enjoyed our space quest to honor the Earth. Anything last you want to say, brother?
Mini Wiconi, we're with you, brothers and sisters. Keep up the good fight, and God bless you. We love you.
All right, brother. Well, you folks out there might have noticed that after 4 episodes, we haven't changed clothes, and that's because we've been recording marathon style, and I've had a cup of tea poured for you this whole time, brother. I'm going to drink it for you now, and I guess very quite appropriately because it's some flavored spirit water in the Jupiter cup. Thank you, Gary. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, water protectors, and for people who will start to listen to the voice of the land and act accordingly. Our world is changing. That's part of the promise. It is happening. Have hope because we are getting this done, and I'm glad that we can share that message in this way. Smell the rose, love in planets. See you in space.
Stand with Standing Rock.